everyone, and welcome to Fika. Our guest today is Susan Bass Marcus. She is the author of an anthology swirling with imagination called The Wrong Move and Other Stories. She's also written two fantasies, Dragon's Return, Malevir 1, and Where Dragons Follow, Malevir 2. She's a poet. She's a puppeteer. I haven't had any puppeteers before, so it just automatically came out. She's a puppeteer, and she begins her days doodling. She's curious, always asking questions about your experiences and ideas, with an infinite supply of information referencing her own. Perhaps it's the residue energy in her neighborhood that encourages this creativity in her days. All I know is that I've been following the yellow brick road in conversations, trying to learn what's truly in that mind of hers. And this wrong move still left me saying, in celebratory, joyful shock, Susan wrote this? Well done. Welcome to Fika, Susan.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, um, I never thought that you would shock me with your books. No, you look so gracious, and you're always so, you know, such a lady. And then there was like this edgy stuff happening. It was
That adage, don't judge a book by its cover.
no, do not, because yes. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your neighborhood that I alluded to? Because it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, we live in an area of the city called Printers Row, and it was an area where a lot of things were printed from the racing form
Hmm.
to
Okay.
it
stu-
was
oh, there we go.
it was still the home of some printer shops.
And we just lost you for a couple minutes
Oh,
for a second before that, and I want people to hear that.
okay.
So,
Which part was missing? Let's see.
you got past the
Oh,
racing forms.
to
Uh,
Wizard of Oz, yeah.
yes, yeah.
When we moved in a number of decades ago, it was still there were still some businesses here that were printing a number of different publications for people. But eventually, people like us, who were called urban pioneers, moved in. This was part of a project to save Printers Row as a landmark district in Chicago. Not only were so many books published in this area and other forms of print, but movie stars used to come in here. At the end of our street is a big train station, beautiful, ornate Italianate station that was going to be torn down too. And a number of developers and architects got together. It not only saved our street, but also the station. And so it's become
Oh,
quite an anchor in the south end of Chicago's downtown.
very cool. I like that they saved
Yeah, oh yeah.
station. I love train stations. So, Brian, have you had any more troubles? I've heard her clearly from that first little problem that we had. So we'll wait to hear what Brian says.
Okay.
But no, so on to my shocker. On to The Wrong Move and Other Stories.
Yeah.
That hasn't been out that long, like a month.
Say that again. I didn't hear it.
Like you've been out. It's been out for
Yeah.
about a month.
No, since May 23rd.
Okay,
I
so
looked on the KDP site, and it said that I had launched it on May 23rd.
a couple of months,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And it was exciting that you put all this together. Some of the stories you had published in other publications and got the rights back to put into this one.
Yeah.
Now, each of these stories are very unique. They're all about women, but each of them are very unique. And you had talked to me about some of the inspirations that went
Mhm.
behind them. So, do you want to take some of the stories that and tell us what inspired them? Oh, there she goes
Two of
again.
the stories are very personal. One of quite a number of years ago, my mother-in-law was failing pretty rapidly, and she had lost her power to speak. So communication was difficult. It was loving, but it was difficult. And we used to take her out and show her a beautiful willow tree in a pond by her house. And I got to thinking that tree was older than my mother in law and had a life of its own. So, in one of the stories, I imagine that people would persist in another life form after they died and perhaps be a tree. So, what happened was that subsequent to my writing that story, somebody in California came up with the idea of potting your ancestors in a particular graveyard and having them return as trees. And I thought, oh, that is so weird, weirder than my
No,
imagining the story.
I want that. That's what I want. I was showing that ad and I was like, oh, that is so cool.
It's very sound environmentally. Yeah, I suppose it is, and I don't know how they do it. And then the other thing, the other story, another story that was very personal was Pieces of Stars, and that was once she lost her ability to uh, communicate with us verbally, and she was weak, so she couldn't write either. Um, I thought, well, what is going on in her head? Well, how is she responding to our very frequent visits and our helping her out and so on? And so that became the basis for my story about her and her personal responses to people who were taking care of her and what happened to her in the end. But all of my stories are a little fantastic at the end. They,
Yes, yes. No, they're twisty and turny and they make you think about your own values and thoughts on life,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
So they're edgy. They're more edgier than you would expect from this very gracious lady sitting in front of us today. Um, they're they're thought provoking, and they're also very very different. There's three short stories, right, and then like a poem,
Four short stories. Wait, there, yeah,
and then a novella, isn't
yeah.
there?
And then, yeah, three short stories. Yeah, that's probably the most favorite content. I'm pretty sure there was, no, there are one, two, three, four short stories, the novella, and then the poem.
Okay. Okay, Brian says she's waiting for this. Her stories are lovely, rich, and dark.
Thank you, Brian.
That's her stories are like coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. You should have said that.
Good,
Okay, right.
good coffee.
Good coffee. That's right.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
And Jenna says she agrees with Brian on that. So the novella, which is
Yeah.
obviously longer than the other stories. What corner of your mind did that originally come from?
Well, there's a wonderful group in Chicago called the Chicago Writers Association. And every year, except I think once or twice during COVID, they they have a fantastic writers conference right in downtown Chicago. And you don't have to be a member to participate, but it's advantageous. Uh, they have wonderful workshops. So one of the workshops I attended, and this was I guess it was 2019. One of the workshops was about writing a short story and getting the juicy bits in right as fast as you could. And I came up with this idea of a woman who was living alone, elderly. very capable, who had new neighbors next door. Now, at the same time, I had just finished an ordeal with the neighbors across the hall who were not ideal, really terrible neighbors. And, or it was actually one person. And I thought, oh gosh, all right. So what's happening with this person? This elderly woman living in an apartment and neighbors who share a wall with her move in. And it soon became sort of paranormal. And then I started working with it. But I was working with it first in that workshop at the conference. And then I took it home and it just rested for a while. And then it started to grow and I started publishing bits and pieces of it on my blog. And people were responding pretty well to that. But by the time it became a finished novella, it was completely different from the way it started. And then I had a really great editor who worked with me on the parts that were inconsistent, not just copy, but the parts that didn't jibe well. And she pointed them out to me. And working with her, I fine tuned it and was really happy with it in the end. And it turned out to be quite a surreal paranormal story, but still very much based on in real life. You didn't have to make great stretches, I didn't think, to.
And no, no, which is what makes it a little more edgy. It's because you could almost feel that happening. That could be me and my next door neighbor. You
Oh
never
yeah,
know what's happening over there. And so it sort of feeds on
yeah.
that kind of thinking. So you quite enjoy the short story format.
I think I enjoy it now more than trying to work out a whole long novel. You get to the point faster. It forces the writer to develop the character more quickly and deeply than rather than stringing it out in a really long novel, which was my experience in the two fantasy novels. And those I wrote for a younger audience, like my grandchildren. But I hoped it would appeal to people, adults also, and YA audiences that like fantasy. So that was my hope then. But when I put these short stories together and the novella, I was really having more of a conversation with adults, and I was being myself and presenting sides of my imagination, as you point out, that people don't expect. And I felt much more satisfied with that short form. It it just it just worked better for me.
Well, we often have a discussion about authenticity. Right, right. So
Yeah,
that comes up here. I think it's obvious when you're really talking in your own voice and sharing your thoughts.
yeah.
But the others, I want to go back to the writing the for your grandson and how that came about and made the switch.
Oh, it's cute.
Brian says, "What evil lurks in the hearts of neighbors, Susan knows and writes about it, and writes well
Thank
about
you.
it." And
Thank you.
that is now for advice for anyone writing short stories out there or whatever. I'm coming up with all kinds of questions I didn't suggest earlier, so I apologize for that. But it's the same kind of thing. You had a lot of these short stories in publications
Uh-huh.
before. Is it becoming more difficult to find those publications because everything's online or whatever, or are they still out there, Susan?
I haven't tried to place anything in the last couple of years, but I subscribe to a writer's resource called duotrope.com. Duotrope is a kind of a library assistant for you. Not only does it keep track of everything you have published, where you published it, when, and what you're supposed to expect in return for that publication, but it also every week gives you several long lists of both paying and non paying magazines, journals, publications that are looking for submissions.
So that's an absolutely wonderful resource.
Oh, it is. It is. And so, with my next short stories, I'll be going to it to see. And what you have to do is usually through a device like Submittable, which many people use. You submit your piece, and then they either reject it or and some of them actually are open to your submitting in multiple places. So you don't have to depend on that one source, which is really great. Um, I love those magazines. They say, all right, as many as you want, submit it. I don't care. If we like it, though, then you have to get rid of take it
The
away from
other
the other.
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's. But it is nice that they let you submit to several different
yeah,
people because
yeah.
some of them are like just me and only me. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and I can understand because they really want. But everybody that had previously published my short stories was generous. Said, "It's your property. We've had it for a long time. Go in good health. Enjoy it, and we're so happy for you. Let us know if it if and when you publish it." So
Fantastic.
they were
That's
really
great.
generous. They were wonderful publishers. Yeah.
And what was the name of that resource that you
All
subscribed
right.
to?
Duotrope.
Right.
DUOTTROPE, one word.com.
Okay. That sounds fantastic. Brian, I'm not even putting that up because that's the entire next part of our show. So we are getting there. Be patient. Brian asked how puppets influenced your current writing. And they are everything to the current writing. So we will go on to that. Not rushing because anybody. Um. So I said that you were a puppeteer,
Yeah, for
and
20 years. Right.
what fueled that passion for you? Why puppets?
Well, I belong to a generation of black and white television. So the early television was one inspiration, and especially one puppet show that was on for about 5 years, then was reduced to half-hour shows and then 15-minute shows, much to the consternation of many people. It was called Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. It originated in Chicago, and then it was syndicated, and it was so magical that I, as a young one, just believed there was a whole world underneath the playboard. That is the board behind which the puppets emerged, or from which I believe that down there was a. In fact, Bert Hillstrom or his friends, his advisors, understood that that's what people believe, and he actually published a book at one point with what went on below the playboard.
Oh,
So that,
fantastic!
yeah, and I don't have it. I don't know where it is now, but I suppose somebody could research that. The other point was that when I was in, I think it was in first grade, the school had various artists come to interest the kids. And one was a wonderful puppeteer from Chicago who also had a magic shop called Magic Ink on North Carmen in Chicago, and his name was Jay Marshall. He was a guy who performed on Ed Sullivan's show, which was a very big show in the 50s. He had a puppet that was a white glove, just a white glove, and he made this. I can't figure out. Here we are. He
I
turned this
understand.
white glove. Here we are. Yeah. He turned this white glove into a puppet that was a rabbit called Lefty. And he used to sing duets with Lefty on the Ed Sullivan show. All right. So the other thing that Jay did very well was a Punch and Judy show. And so he brought this Punch and Judy show to my first grade classroom. It was dark in the classroom. All you could see was the lighted stage within the proscenium, and these puppets went at it. And Mr. Punch talked like this. He was so scary, and he was so mean. But
Just mean.
yeah, but an alligator got him at the end of the show.
Yay!
So those two experiences really stuck in my head all my life. And then when I babysat for my three younger siblings, I would do little puppet shows for them, mostly with shadows on the wall of the bedroom part of our house, with the night light casting just the right kind of light for me to do shadow puppets for them to keep my siblings, you know, in line. So I did that. But then let's skip ahead to when I had two kids and I was at home and still wanted to exercise my creativity because I'd always loved theater as well as puppets. And my wonderful husband suggested that I start doing puppet shows. So I joined a great organization in Chicago at the time where Jay Marshall was. And I got to meet the Jay Marshall as an adult. It was called the Chicagoland Puppetry Guild, and it still exists, though virtually now instead of in person. And there was some wonderful, real professional puppeteers there. And I studied with one of them named Hans Schmidt. And then I went on to study in other workshops at puppetry festivals and so on with other professional puppeteers. And before I knew it, I was doing puppet shows in public, and it just grew and grew and grew. And it was something that I loved doing. I wrote the scripts, I created the puppets, I performed. And so I did the lighting, I did the sound, I did everything.
So you were creating a world.
I was. And so that I like the way you frame that because that was a stepping stone to writing stories.
It
And
was
yeah, and so that when my little grandson, he was only maybe 5 years old, 4 years old, went shopping with us in a toy store one day, and we bought him a dragon puppet. He asked me, Grandma Susie, would you please make up a story about this? And it became for him and his sister a serial. And every time we visited, there was another chapter. And one day I was in the kids' room with them and spinning out yet another chapter of this story. And they suggested kinds of characters, and the dragons were big. They really wanted to know what happened to these dragons. My son walked into the room and said, "Mom, you should turn that into a book." And after a lot of struggling, I did. And I
so
turned it into the first Malevir book, Dragon's Return.
so you have a lot of supportive males in your life. I mean, your husband says
That's true.
become a puppeteer, and then your son says become a writer. That's kind of nice support to have there.
That's a
Is
very observation. It's true.
Gee, mom. So, and you also got to meet another one of your
Oh,
childhood heroes as well.
yeah, Bert Hillstrom. I did because I became very active in the Chicago Land Puppetry Guild and was organizing a puppetry fest, and he came to it. You can imagine. Oh my God. I did, but I tried to be very cool and very professional about it. And then, yeah, I got to know him. And then also, at that stage, also, we went to a movie theater in Chicago. All the time we showed our
We- okay, try talking again. We
Oh,
just got
are we all right now?
okay. Go back a little bit. We
So
missed the very first part of that.
so I met him at puppetry festivals, and it was terrific. And then we went to the Carnegie Theater, which is an art film movie house in Chicago at the time. It doesn't exist anymore. And who's standing in line in front of me but Bert Hillstrom? And we got to talking while we were waiting to buy tickets. And then next thing I knew, he had arranged a commission for me with the Art Institute of Chicago to do a professional show about the last days of Pompeii. And I got another puppeteer interested to do that with me. And it was just wonderful. And then he came to Chicago and did Side by Side by Sondheim with Kukla and Ollie. And I brought a puppet backstage, and that puppet got to talk to Burr and to Kukla and to Ollie. And then Bert Hillstrom watched as all his cast, his human cast, surrounded me and my puppet. And he said, "Well, can you beat that? I've been upstaged by somebody else's puppet." And it was just so sweet. He was just so lovely. So that not only I, but so many people in Chicago mourn the day that he passed away because he was such a gentle, good spirit, wonderful guy.
And Chicago sounds like a magical place to me from hearing your stories.
You know, it is. It's a wonderful theater city. It's a wonderful
It sounds like it.
one of Bert Hillstrom's puppeteers, because he had other people working with him. A guy named Mark Larson has written a wonderful book about Chicago theater, the history of it, and why it gives you an idea of why the theater world in Chicago is so important and so vibrant. Yeah. So there are a lot of little connections out there.
Well, and it was a different time. Like, this has caused me to go back and think about a lot of the childhood shows that I watched, including
Yeah.
Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. But
Right.
I believe it was in color at that point, because that is the show itself lasted for quite a while, didn't it?
Only for about 5 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, I
Okay.
think so. I think so. I know that they just kept cutting back on it. You know, television, the nature of television changed too.
Yes, yes. Well, that's what I mean. There was Captain Kangaroo had puppets. Uh, um, we had the Friendly Giant here that had puppets. Like, a lot of the shows that I watched had
Oh yeah.
puppets before we moved to computer generated, you know,
Imagery. You're right.
yeah, imagery. Yeah, and there was an innocence to that I don't know, and anybody could be a puppeteer, like in their house, in their home. They didn't have to
Yeah.
wait for computer training to do that. So it was a good time. So then we became a writer through the puppets, writing the scripts and telling our grandson the dragon stories. And we became a writer of dragon stories, and then on to this edgy stuff because dragons weren't edgy enough.
They
No,
can
they're
be. Some other writers are really good at it.
yes. Uh, Game of Thrones. Um, there the the idea. Now you just threw me right off with that, Susan. It was on to think, but no, the idea of taking real life and putting the fantasy on top of it, I think adds an edgier, realistic, more scary kind of presence. Not necessarily scary, but just odd.
I think a writer has to be a little bit of an anxious person. You have to be the kind of person who says, "Well, you don't really know what's going to happen. Well, you really don't know what's going to happen next."
I'm sorry. You are right. I mean, they tend to be overthinkers, and they tend to be a little, I don't want to say insecure, but very sensitive to their surroundings and have a story of their own that they held with it.
That's pretty diplomatic. Yeah.
Writers are strange. Brian said, "Have you ever thought of creating a puppet show based on your recent adult short stories? That would be interesting."
Yeah, but I don't perform anymore. In fact,
At all?
no, I'm just trying to sell my puppets now.
I know,
So
but that
I
makes me
don't get them.
sad.
Mhm. Oh well,
That makes me this.
there are some of them I would keep. I've got this little guy who my husband also just loves. His name is Orange Julius.
And there he is.
He's actually quite. Hey, hey, come on! It's okay. It's
He's
okay.
not an evil clown.
No, he's a very sweet clown. He had a long history of working with kids in children's hospitals. The Chicago
I,
Children's Hospital and the Children's Memorial Hospital hired me for several years on the basis of it was funded by a grant from a really wonderful organization. And I used to do a lot of bedside therapy, but this wasn't to prepare kids for their surgeries. This was to get them to talk about how they were feeling. And he's silent, he doesn't talk. So everything is through gestures. One of the stories I included on my blog was about a little girl who, at the time, was not going to survive her illness. And she had become, she was mute. for about 2 or 3 weeks, and her parents were really upset. They couldn't get her to communicate. She was deeply depressed. Child Life is the organization within the hospital that works with these issues with kids, and tries very hard to give children as much of a sense of autonomy and vitality as they possibly can have in a really dehumanizing situation. A hospital is not the best place to feel like yourself or that you have any
No,
power whatsoever.
no.
So I would sit bedside with Orange Julius, and he would just sort of talk and hide. But basically, he was really shy. And what this one little girl wanted to do was to bring him out of his shell. And so she actually reached out to him, and then he in turn reached out to her, and she started to whisper what she was feeling in his ear. And then um, he was able not to communicate that because it was a secret between them, but communicate something good to the parents. So I would leave after my session with her, and then, or he would leave too. And then I heard a few weeks later that because of that interaction, she began to speak with her parents again, and they were able to talk about what was
Oh,
happening. And then she did die. And the parents wrote me a very long letter or wrote to Child Life, and Child Life sent it to me, um, that about what had happened and how grateful they were for this interaction with the puppet. And um, I didn't go in there thinking I'm going to save this little girl. All I did was think she's got to feel like she has some power, something. And the puppet really helped free her up to express herself. And so that was one of the most deeply moving experiences I had with my puppets. The least moving was my Punch and Judy show for a 40-year-old man's birthday party.
maybe we shouldn't go to those stories.
Oh no,
Okay.
this one is G-rated.
Okay.
In the cast of characters in Punch and Judy is Polly Peachum, who is also from the Beggar's Opera, and she's a lady of ill repute. So she has a little bit of a bosom showing, but not obscene or anything. So she was in this performance, and we're going along, and I could tell from the audience reaction that they were having lots of good drinks. And at the end of the show, and my husband was with me, thank goodness, when I did this. He was helping me set up and tear down. And I had a very big proscenium stage. It was like 4 feet wide with a big arch. I was completely hidden, and then it was about 6 feet high. So it's a big thing. So this guy comes up to the playboard, and he leans on it, and he looks down inside and starts calling for Polly. He wants to give Polly a kiss. Fortunately, my husband was really good about dissuading him and getting rid of him. But they were rowdy, these people, and this is just a puppet show. This was in the Chicago suburbs, and in retrospect, it was really funny.
At the moment, maybe not so.
I didn't know if this guy was going to molest my puppet.
Quick, get her out of here! Save the puppet. Yeah. Yeah, that's quite a different story. So you performed at hospitals, at birthday parties, not only for children.
Right, schools, rec centers, just all sorts of places. Yeah,
and the library as well, right?
Oh, definitely in the library. Yeah, but the most thrilling one was to be invited to Massachusetts for the Modern Language Association. Somehow they had heard of me because I was very active in the Puppeteers of America, which is a national organization. Maybe I can't remember now. Maybe they heard about me then, and I didn't have to. I offered, and they accepted the idea of doing a Punch and Judy show in French, which I did. and I don't know why they wanted it, but Modern Language Association is French,
Right,
Italian,
right.
all the modern languages, and so I did it, and it was lots of fun. And then I went home again.
So grab a puppet and go places. This,
Oh yeah.
this
Oh,
definitely.
I used to have a little red pickup truck with a cover on the back of the pickup section, and I would tootle off to Wisconsin, to Indiana. I would do shows all over the place for various venues, and it was really fun. It was very much fun. And yeah, I always felt like, yeah, I'm in a truck. This will interest you, but I was in a truck, and I used to blink my lights at big rigs.
My husband is a transport driver, so we've had. So you're the one.
I felt a certain degree of kinship.
Traveling down the highway with the
Right,
road song.
right.
And the library gigs also contributed to your
Oh yeah,
writing as well.
oh yeah. For several years, I lived in the suburb of Wilmette, and they have a fantastic library, public library in Wilmette, Illinois, and this lovely person, Jane Hutter. No, not Jane. Yeah, well, no, Jane. Oh gosh, right now I'm having a blank. But she hired me to be the story hour lady, and I did that. And then she expanded my duties to start at a preteen puppetry group, and I coached them through about 5 or 6 productions. Well, first of all, the library had a collection of puppets. And they asked me to rehab them and fix them so they could be used again by these kids. So I did that first. And then I had to come up with and script all these shows using those puppets. So that was fun. And these kids were great. And our oldest child, our daughter, was one of the preteens who was in the troupe as well, which was very much fun to have her there. And so it was a great experience working with these kids. They were darling, and they were really willing to just give it their all and perform with these puppets. And we used a stage very similar to mine that my mentor Ham Schmidt had given to them, or loaned to them, to the library. And so it was just so much fun to work with those
As
kids. So that was another scripting experience, and working with somebody else's puppets and bringing them back to life.
now first of all, I think that's wonderful, is passing down the torch, and it's not something that you always see. So, and I mean, obviously you're passionate, so it would rest with others.
Oh yeah.
Two, on a totally selfish note, I now want a book of short stories about the puppeteer who grows older and sends the puppets away, and how those
Oh,
puppets feel, and reestablish new lives with new puppeteers.
oh wow. What a cool idea.
And you heard it here. Fika with Vicky. We will be expecting that book in like 2 years. You have one on the go. You have a couple on the go. Oh, she's writing it down in her. There we go.
Well, here's one of those puppets. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get rid of him. I can't even turn him around right. Let me put him on a different hand. Poor guy. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? I'm so sorry. All right, there. All right, there he is. Are you? There you go.
Hey,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
No, no.
Now,
Anyway, I did a show called "The Shoemakers and the Elves," and I even wrote a song for it. The shoemaker's wife was so annoyed with her husband for not making shoes that anyone would want to buy, so she sang to him about the patches on her clothes. And of course, during the night, the elves came, and I don't know how Sesame Street does this. They have to work with a monitor. It's just like this. Everything is backwards.
and this is why they do not do puppet shows on on computer screens. No, I know
What's the
it's
matter? You don't
difficult
know
to
where
get.
you are, right?
It
Okay.
takes a certain talent to get the directions right.
Yeah.
Do you have Tim with you today, or?
Oh, Tim. Yeah, I'd have to get up and go get him.
Oh well, no, no. You have
Well,
to. I mean, if you want to.
Just over there.
Okay. We're waiting for Tim. I'm kind of fond of Tim, and I'm obviously fond of puppets in general, as we all should be. I also want to hear read that book that hasn't been written yet or agreed to be written. I have to work on that. So if you're listening, you're watching, definitely come on over to Fika and let me know what were some of your favorite shows with puppets growing up. And
Okay.
here we go. This is Tim. I like Tim. Tim's a jolly fellow.
Yeah, Tim, I can't hold him right because I don't know where I am. But this, yes, Tim has gone all the way to Ireland. Yeah, he liked it very much.
He's clapping his hands.
Did you like it? Yeah. Okay. He liked it. He entertained the cousins of a friend of ours, and in their Irish cottage in Athlone, Ireland, and told them stories. And in return, he got a lot of loving. But this little guy, I thought he was so cute. I would give him to my grandchildren, and then he disappeared for years. And on a recent visit, I saw him in a box of puppets. I didn't know if they were going to go
And
to
grandmother took him back?
grandmother took him back.
Is that allowed?
I don't know. I don't know what my daughter-in-law thinks of this, but she's a very generous person, so she probably said go and good help. But no, Tim. I looked at him in that box and I went, "Oh, Tim, there you are." And I opened the box and took him out and said, "You're going home with mommy." And so he was very happy. Yes, he was. He was. But he was based. This is the puppet that upstaged Bert Hillstrom.
Oh, because he's lovable, and
Yeah.
and Brian said perhaps Susan could make a puppet show based on Vicky. Fika, I have an even better idea. What if we did Fika and puppets? Okay, think about it. We could get puppets that reflected us, and then just like go down. Although we are all getting older, I'm not sure that position would be comfortable for very long. But we could do. I like this. I like this idea. Susan, we need to do Fika
I think a
puppets.
puppet show.
Yes.
But we have to learn how to use the monitor.
Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, because we can't. I don't know. Well, there is a lot of production issues we have to work out, and we'll forget we were going to do this, but it didn't.
It's very funny. Very
So,
funny.
so the creativity does not end with the puppets. However, I have
No.
said that you are an insightful doodler because I believe that you are. But in the mornings, when you're having, I take it while you're having your
Coffee.
morning coffee. Okay, I didn't want to assume.
No,
Um,
it's,
the,
it's not an assumption. It's a necessity.
I was gonna say, well, you do a lot and you and you move around a lot, so yeah, coffee would be a necessity. You began to doodle on while doing your crossword
Yeah,
puzzles,
the
right?
paper was really nice. The books I get these easy crossword puzzles or moderate crossword puzzles. Some of them are printed on really great paper because they're made for writing and erasing maybe. And when I finish the puzzle, I've got all this beautiful white space on the page still left, and it just needs to be filled in with something, just something. So
And so you started doodling,
do it. Yeah,
and then you started sharing those doodles.
right. I did. I thought, oh well, let's just put it on Facebook and let other people have a laugh or say, oh yeah, that resonates today. That's what the weather's like. And one of my doodle characters is a lady past middle age whose name is Gerty. And Gertie has this sort of nice white, longer than mine, white hair and likes to wear hats with flowers on them sometimes. She's very outdoorsy and she has lots of girlfriends and she has a black cat. And so Gertie goes out and she jogs, she goes to the store, she gardens, but she also makes observations. And those are the observations that just come to me if I am unfortunate enough to have seen the headlines in the morning, or looked out
Well,
the
it's
window at the weather or whatever. And so she makes these observations. And or sometimes I draw really crazy birds, and the birds are
oh, some of those bird sketches are fabulous. I'm thinking of some flamingos that you did,
oh yeah, my fingers
and
are pretty good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm pretty proud of my flamingos, Susan. But they
I did a whole series on terns and making puns out of the word tern, Tern, the related to seagulls, and uh, so I had a turn of events. I had taken the wrong turn. It's not your turn yet. Just all sorts of things like that, and costuming the birds or putting them in situations that were appropriate to the saying. And so that was lots of fun. And that was based on this wonderful game I was playing with my sister, where we were just punning endlessly for a while.
okay, I was just no, I'm still listening to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
I was I'm sure maybe that's why she's Dave's just saying that the puppets um played a big role in the
oh, yeah.
original movies of Star Wars, and I actually sort of liked them better than the middle, like the prequels that used computer. I liked the puppets. I thought they were
Yeah.
more
Especially Yoda. Yeah. I didn't know much about Jabba the Hutt and how they worked it, but Yoda definitely right. It was very well done, and I think it was Frank Oz. He was a Sesame Street originator and puppeteer. Frank Oz. Um, his parents, Mike, I only forgot his mother's name, but his parents were members of puppet and very influential uh, as leaders of Puppeteers of America. So he had puppetry in his veins before he was born. Even he was Frank Oz. So I think he manipulated Yoda for a while. I think so. I'm not 100% on that. But at any rate, they were, yes, those were really done well and in person, and that was amazing. Just to learn how they originally moved those puppets on Sesame Street was a revelation. They actually built up a platform, and above the platform, with all kinds of passageways, you could see the puppets. Underneath the platform were these puppeteers just, just moving around
well,
like
yeah.
it's really something. And sometimes you'd have two or more puppeteers on one puppet.
Yeah, no, I can really see how because yeah, well, when they're dancing and they're and they're swirling like it's going,
With the sound,
and yeah, no, it would take a lot of mastery to do that.
yeah.
It more. We need more puppeteers. We need more puppets.
Well, it's a big deal. Chicago has an organization called the Chicago International Puppetry Festival, or Puppet Festival, and Blair Thomas is the head of this whole thing. And he worked for years with some other puppeteers, and then struck out on his own, and then established this festival that is astounding. So much talent comes now to Chicago, puppeteers from all over the world, and they also give workshops. Many of them are geared to professionals, but they do workshops, and it's right in my neighborhood. So it's just astounding.
The
Just
song is right. My kind of town. It has puppets.
for the art, for the arts, Chicago is a great town. Yeah.
I guess so. I never knew this. I never looked upon, there's that whole, you know.
I know Chicago, the gangsters, Elliot Ness,
I
or
didn't want to say.
or the slaughterhouses, or yeah. Well, it's typical of Midwestern cities, but so many of them have transitioned into the digital world and have beefed up their art, their cultural offerings. I think that the recession and the pandemic really injured a lot of that. But what is so wonderful about it, Chicago, is there's a tremendous amount of support for the theater world and for the arts. Not so much for, of course, restaurants and bars, they really suffered, but the arts, they stayed.
They went
They
on.
stayed. Yeah.
Oh, well, restaurants are a very dubious industry to begin with. One out of three goes
It's
out of
hard.
business.
Yeah.
It's a difficult business, and I've worked in it. Now back to Gertie and the wonderful drip. So before you can write the story about the sad puppets leaving her puppeteer,
I didn't get
you
that.
you are writing now. Gertie is going into a book with your
Yeah.
sketches.
I would very much like, and I've started assembling different drawings, but some of them I really have to redo and make them presentable to the public. Um, it's one thing to just put your little sketches on Facebook and say, maybe you feel the same way today, and then put it in a book. Yeah, it's not. It has to be better quality.
There's
So
a transition and
yeah, I have to.
to
But I thought I would. This is just a germ of an idea right now. At first, I thought I would do Gertie through the seasons, but that doesn't have enough bite. So I thought I would do
Gertie
Ger-
in an apartment.
Gertie, 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 comma the plague years. I
And
like that more. And
well,
so
and
I would
she
look back on it.
well, she really came to life during
She
the
did.
plague wars.
Yeah, really did. Yeah. She was able to. I mean, I drew Gertie with masks on and being isolated and looking at the news and getting out there and jogging and with her mask on and just all sorts of situations that were particular to that experience that we all have in common. And I thought, now that we're hoping we can look back on it. I think it's more approachable. I don't think it's something I could have done during the height of the plague.
It was like that was one of the things that I think held some authors back is where do we go in this? Do we
Yeah,
what is not having it was unprecedented for this generation, for this time to not have an idea of what was coming next.
right.
Pretty much.
Unprecedented. Yeah.
And so I always like it when when Susan thinks I used the right word. When she says I'm president and repeats it, president, I'm like, oh, good. I chose well.
You speak very well. Nothing to apologize for.
I don't know. I go off sometimes, but it definitely I think is something to look back on, and sometimes I might have read this somewhere, but we don't always feel the emotions fully during the time. It takes time to digest them,
Yeah,
right?
if we have that time, yes, and we could be grateful for it. I was just thinking, some of the cartoons are about. She has a close friend who uh, was looked more like a barfly than anything else, but it turned out that she bought the bar she used to sit in all the time, and then became a lot more responsible and demanding of her customers. And at first, I have Gertie, and her friend is Clarice, and Gertie and Clarice are just talking long distance because they can't get together. Uh, and before the plague, they are sort of sharing, but Gertie has just some soda. Clarice is there, I'm talking to her, and and then they're separated because of the pandemic. And at the end of this series that I have, just drawings. They're random drawings. They're talking to each other again, and and then she has other friends as well with whom she shares um, a coffee at a sidewalk cafe, and it's just this is her little world, and I love going into it. And I love being, in a sense, I'm not all knowing because sometimes I just don't know how that drawing's going to come out. But when it does, and I see where she is, I really enjoy the privilege of entering her world. And I think writers who are really engaged with their creations, their characters, feel the same way. I hear so many of my friends who are writers say, well, the character said I had to do this. I mean, this is how she was going or he was going. I had no choice.
And then people tell us they're not real. Like, no. And no. And so this is why I've brought you all here today. This is why I wanted to show the many, many different faces of Susan. Because it's such a joy to watch the it's not like you have a definite goal in mind, Susan.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do this, but you take whatever the creativity hits you with and you run with it. And it's so nice to see, like, oh, today I'm doodling. And then you just doodle till you have a lot of doodles, and oh, this might work for this.
Yeah.
Or with the puppetry or with the dragon. It's all been this gradual growth that you continue each day, enjoying each day along with it.
Well,
So
I'm glad you pointed that out because I never thought of it. But it's true. It's a good description of how my days are. Yeah, it's a very good description.
okay, Brian, you just always have to. Hi, Brian, and welcome to Fika. Before I get told you're so mean to Brian, you will go running away. It sounds like you're a pantser when you draw. Are you? Are your
Oh,
written efforts the same? It was going to
well,
come.
yeah. Well, I am. When I'm a writer, I have some really basic ideas, but the rest of the process is, yeah, I'm a pantser because I just like to see what happens. I don't. I know that outlines are really helpful, and I think with the Gerty book, I have to outline it more because it's based on drawings as well, and I have to select the drawings. So
So
yeah, it has to
this
be.
drawing goes here, and this.
I can't start introducing another character all of a sudden. I don't want to do that. I want to use what I have already. But the drawings, no. You know what happens is I get a thought, and the thought informs the drawing. So I wouldn't say that you can apply the same term to doodling because they're not really doodles. I'm trying to draw something. I'm trying to draw a feeling that I have through the characters, whether it's a bird or Gertie or or an elf. Whatever I'm drawing, that is eventually the embodiment of the incarnation of the thought I was having.
Now, Susan, you're messing with my narrative. I like the idea of you just sitting magically, and coming up with, oh, it's an elf. This, but no. I was just thinking that this is like I love picture books. Okay,
Yeah,
for my
yeah.
for my little library, I'm out there looking for picture books for these kids because the art in that is amazing. And so basically, you're making an adult
Picture book.
picture book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. Which?
It's
Oh, okay. Hold it. You went again.
oh,
Okay, you're back.
okay.
Okay, okay. What
Yeah,
was that? The
it's
last line you.
it's an adult picture book. Yeah,
Okay, I feel like there was something more profound that was going on the other side of that camera. No,
always.
that is it. So, Susan, thank you for joining and sharing
Sure.
all of the puppet information. It was a joy. And so, people, you see, you never know what you're going to get from Susan on any given day. So go get
The wrong
the
move.
wrong move,
Right.
because it will be the right move
It will be the
for
right move.
you for you to do. Okay, I'm just gonna keep Susan on till the end, and we'll see you all next week. Until
Bye.
then, may your coffee be hot and your stories sweet. Thank
Bye.
you for listening, everyone. Bye,
Bye.
Susan. And now, oh my goodness, where did I go? See, I tried to do that and be so cool, and it just didn't work out.